As Christians, we are united in prayer, and we take some time today to pause and pray as we reflect on the suffering journey of Christ. As we accompany Jesus on his journey to Calvary, let us take a moment to remember how difficult that journey was. He carried his cross through the narrow, crowded streets of Jerusalem. It was Passover time, and so the city was full of people, many who mocked, jostled, and took pleasure in watching as Jesus struggled with his heavy burden. The way was often steep. The journey that Jesus made on that day remains a symbol of Christianity in the world, as it struggles with its own crosses and failures, and the challenges of modern life. The streets of our towns are filled with people who carry their personal crosses, who are bruised, battered, and broken. Through these stations of the cross, Jesus is inviting us to journey with him and to reflect on his suffering as it continues in the lives of his people. In solidarity with all who suffer, let us pray that we will be open to whatever he wants us to see, hear, and understand.
We adore you, O Christ, and we bless you, because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world. A reading from Matthew 27, 22 to 26. What shall I do then with Jesus who is called the Messiah? Pilate asked. The crowd answered, Crucify him. Why? What crime has he committed? Asked Pilate. But they shouted all the louder, Crucify him! When Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, but that instead an uproar was starting, he took water and washed his hands in front of the crowd. I am innocent of this man's blood, he said. It is your responsibility. All the people answered, His blood is on us and on our children. Pilate then released Barabbas to them. He had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. As we imagine the scene, perhaps we see chaos, mayhem, people pushing and pulling at each other, screaming, shouting. Jesus stands in the most human of places. He has already experienced profound solidarity with so many on this earth by being beaten and tortured. Now he is wrongfully condemned to punishment by death. His commitment to entering our lives completely begins its final steps. He has said yes to God and placed his life in God's hands. We follow him in this final surrender and contemplate with reverence each place along the way as he is broken and given for us. As I view the scene, I become moved by both outrage and gratitude. I look at Jesus, his face, the crown of thorns, the blood, his clothes stuck to the wounds on his back. Pilate washes his hands of the whole affair. Jesus' hands are tied behind his back. This is for me, that I might be free, that I might have eternal life. As the journey begins, I ask to be with Jesus, to follow his journey. I express my love and thanks.
We adore you, O Christ, and we bless you, because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world. A reading from John, chapter 19, verse 17. Carrying his own cross, Jesus went out to the place of the skull, which in Aramaic is called Golgotha. Jesus is made to carry the cross on which he will die. It represents the weight of all our crosses. What he must have felt as he first took it upon his shoulders. With each step, he enters more deeply into our human experience. He walks in the path of human misery and suffering, and experiences its crushing weight. I contemplate the wood of that cross. I imagine how heavy it is. I reflect upon all it means that Jesus is carrying it. I look into his eyes. It's all there. This is for me. So I place myself with him in this journey, in its anguish, in his freedom and surrender, in the love that must fill his heart. With sorrow and gratitude, I continue the journey, moved by the power of his love. I am drawn to him and express my love in the words that have come to me.
We adore you, O Christ, and we bless you, because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world. A reading from John, chapter 12, verses 27 to 28. Jesus said, "Now my soul is troubled, and what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour. No, it was for this very reason I came to this hour. Father, glorify your name." Then a voice came from heaven, "I have glorified it, and I will glorify it again." The weight is unbearable. Jesus falls under it. How could he enter our lives completely without surrendering to the crushing weight of the life of so many on this earth? He lays on the ground and knows the experience of weakness beneath unfair burdens. He feels the powerlessness of wondering if he will ever be able to continue. He is pulled up and made to continue. I stare at the weakness in his eyes. I can look at his whole body and see the exhaustion. As I behold him there on the ground, being roughly pulled up, I know forever how profoundly he understands my fatigue and my defeats. This is for me. In grief and gratitude, I want to let him remain there. As I watch him stand again and gain an inner strength, I accept his love and express my thanks.
We adore you, O Christ, and we bless you, because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world. The reading is from Luke chapter 2, 34 to 35. Simeon blessed them and said to Mary, Jesus' mother, "This child is destined to cause the falling and rising of many in Israel, and to be a sign that will be spoken against, so that the thoughts of many hearts will be revealed, and a sword will pierce your own soul too." Jesus' path takes him to a powerful source of his strength to continue. All his life his mother had taught him the meaning of the words, "Behold, the handmaid of the Lord." Now they look into each other's eyes. How pierced through her heart must be. How pained he must be to see her tears. Now her grace-filled smile blesses his mission and stirs his heart to its depth. Love and trust in God bind them together. As I watch them in this place along the way, I contemplate the mystery of love's power to give strength. She knows the sorrow in every mother's heart who has lost a child to tragedy or violence. I look at the two of them very carefully and long for such love and such peace. This is, for me, such incredible freedom, the availability of a servant. I find the words to express what is in my heart.
We adore you, O Christ, and we bless you, because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world. A reading from Luke 23:26. As the soldiers led Jesus away, they seized Simon from Cyrene, who was on his way in from the country, and put the cross on him and made him carry it behind Jesus. Jesus even experiences our struggle to receive help. He is made to experience the poverty of not being able to carry his burden alone. He enters into the experience of all who must depend upon others to survive. He's deprived of the satisfaction of carrying this burden on his own. And Simon the Cyrene, a stranger in the city, someone who did not know Jesus. But that didn't matter. What matters here, in this moment of need, was that Simon was capable of lending his shoulders to one whose own had given out, of offering his strength to one who had nothing left, of taking on himself the cross which Jesus could no longer carry. I look into his face and contemplate his struggle, his weariness and fragility, his powerlessness. I see how he looks at Simon with utmost humility and gratitude. This is for me. So I feel anguish and gratitude. I express my thanks that he can continue this journey, that he has help, that he knows my inability to carry my burden alone. I say what is in my heart with deep feeling.
We adore you, O Christ, and we bless you, because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world. A reading from Matthew chapter 25, verses 35 to 36 and verse 40. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. Truly, I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. Jesus' journey is at times brutal. He has entered into the terrible experiences of rejection and injustice. He has been whipped and beaten. His face shows the signs of his solidarity with all who have ever suffered injustice and vile, abusive treatment. he encounters a compassionate, loving disciple, Veronica, who quite literally pushes herself, her own body, into the heart of suffering and struggle, into a rowdy crowd that can hardly afford her safety, who threw aside cultural norms, taboos, and took action, who wipes the vulgar spit and mocking blood from his face. On her veil, she discovers the suffering image of his face, his gift to her and for us to contemplate forever. What does the face of Jesus hold for me? What do I see as I look deeply into his face? Can I try to comfort the agony and pain? Can I embrace him with his face so covered with his passion? The veil I see is a true icon of his gift of himself. This is for me. In wonder and awe, I behold his face now wiped clean, and see the depth of his suffering in solidarity with all flesh.
We adore you, O Christ, and we bless you, because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world. A reading from Isaiah. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. He was led like a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shearers is silent, so he did not open his mouth. Even with help, Jesus stumbles again and falls to the ground, stretched to breaking point by his awful scourging, bowed under the weight of the cross, worn out by the abandonment of all his friends. In deep exhaustion, he stares at the earth beneath him. Remember, you are dust, and to dust you will return. He has seen death before. Now he can feel the profound weakness of disability and disease and aging itself, there on his knees under the weight of his cross. I contemplate Jesus brought very low. As I behold him there on the ground, with all the agony taking its toll on him, I let my heart go out to him. I store up this image in my heart, knowing that I will never feel alone in my suffering, or in any diminishment, with this image of Jesus on the ground before me. This is for me, so I express the feelings in my heart. Lord
We adore you, O Christ, and we bless you, because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world. A reading from Luke, chapter 23, verses 27 to 28. A large number of people followed Jesus, including the women who mourned and wailed for him. Jesus turned and said to them, "Daughters of Jerusalem, do not weep for me. Weep for yourselves and for your children." The women of Jerusalem and their children came out to comfort him, to give him the warmth of a loving heart. They had seen his compassion and welcomed his words of healing and freedom. He had broken all kinds of social and religious conventions to connect with them. Now they are here to support him. He feels their grief. He suffers knowing he can't remain to help them more in this life. He knows the mystery of facing the separation of death. He breaks his silence for the first time, moved by their bitter lament, speaking to them, telling them not to be disheartened by his sufferings, telling them to be women, not of grief but of faith, asking for a solidarity in suffering. I look at their faces, so full of love and gratitude, loss of fear. I contemplate what words might have passed between them. I remember all his tender, compassionate, merciful love for me. I place myself with these women and children to support him. This is for me, so I let this scene stir up in me those that I should weep for today, for those that are abused, for those that are victimised, for those that are marginalised, for those that are old and forgotten, for those that starve in the shadow of abundance, for those that are homeless, in exile or seeking refuge. I weep for them.
We adore you, O Christ, and we bless you, because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world. A reading from John 15, beginning at the 18th verse. Jesus said, "If the world hates you, keep in mind that it hated me first. If you belong to the world, it would love you as its own. As it is, you do not belong to the world, but I have chosen you out of the world. That is why the world hates you. Remember what I told you. A servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will persecute you also. If they obeyed my teaching, they will obey yours also. This last fall is devastating, broken, exhausted, physically and emotionally. Jesus can barely proceed to the end, and he collapses under the weight of the cross. Lying on the ground in the dirt, he must decide. Does he get up once more or stop and give up? Summoning all his remaining strength, supported by his inner trust in God, he rises again. His executioners look at him as a broken man, pathetic, yet paying a price he deserves. They help him up so he can make it up the hill of crucifixion. I pause to contemplate him there on the ground, the brokenness that makes me whole, the surrender that gives me life. I pause to experience and receive how completely he loves me. He is indeed completely poured out for me. As I treasure this gifted experience, I express what is in my heart.
We adore you, O Christ, and we bless you, because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world. A reading from John 19, verses 23 to 24. They took his clothes and divided them into 4 parts, one for each soldier. They also took his tunic. Now the tunic was seamless, woven in one piece from the top. So they said to one another, "Let us not tear it, but cast lots for it to see who will get it." Part of the indignity is to be crucified naked. Jesus is completely stripped of any pride. The wounds on his back are torn open again. He experiences the ultimate vulnerability of the defenselessness. No shield or security protects him. As they stare at him, his eyes turn to heaven. Jesus sacrificed everything. He holds nothing of himself back. Here, on the threshold of death, even more intensely than during his lifetime, he is a being for others. He surrenders everything in order to ransom all. I pause to watch the stripping. I contemplate all that is taken from him and how he faces his death with such nakedness. I reflect upon how much of himself he has revealed to me, holding nothing back. As I look at him in his humility, I know that this is for me, and I share my feelings of gratitude and thanks that help me come to him with those things I need to let go of.
We adore you, O Christ, and we bless you, because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world. A reading from the Gospel of Mark. It was 9 o'clock in the morning when they crucified him. The inscription of the charge against him read, "The King of the Jews." And with him they crucified 2 bandits, one on his right and one on his left. Huge nails are hammered through his hands and feet to fix him on the cross. Iron through human flesh. The flesh must yield, there is no defense. Jesus, nailed to the cross, cannot move. The hand that has wiped blindness from the eyes, the hand that opened the seal of deafness, the hand that touched a heart and cured a leper, the hand that blessed children and those with a disability. The carpenter's hand is joined to the wood again. As the cross is lifted up, the weight of his life hangs on those nails. Every time he struggles to pull himself up to breathe, his ability to cling to life slips away. As the cross is put in place, he hangs there between us and God, a blood-stained victim for love. I make myself watch the nails being driven through his flesh, and I watch his face. I contemplate the completeness of his entry into our lives. Can there be any pain or agony he would not understand? This is for me, nailed to a cross, to forever proclaiming liberty to captives. What sorrow and gratitude fill my heart.
We adore you, O Christ, and we bless you, because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world. A reading from Matthew 27:45-46. From noon until 3 in the afternoon, darkness came over all the land. About 3 in the afternoon, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? A reading from Luke 23:44-46. It was now about noon that darkness came over the whole land until 3 in the afternoon, for the sun stopped shining, and the curtain of the temple was torn in two. Jesus called out with a loud voice, Father, into your hands I commit my spirit. When he had said this, he breathed his last. As the life of Jesus ebbs away, his words are not of condemnation or of pity for himself, but of forgiveness. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. In the midst of his anguish and suffering, Jesus calls up on his Father to forgive those who are putting him to death. I stand there at the foot of the cross, side by side with all of humanity, and behold our salvation. I carefully watch and listen to all that is said, and then I experience the one who gives life, pass from life to death, for me. This is the hour to express the deepest feelings within me. Let us stand with those who watched and prayed in silence while Jesus breathed his last. As we cannot measure love, so we cannot dilute this ultimate act of love and forgiveness with words. Let our love span the silence.
We adore you, O Christ, and we bless you, because by your holy cross you have redeemed the world. A reading from the Gospel of St. Mark, chapter 15, verses 42 to 45. It was preparation day, that is the day before the Sabbath. So as evening approached, Joseph of Arimathea, a prominent member of the council who was himself waiting for the kingdom of God, went boldly to Pilate and asked for Jesus' body. Pilate was surprised to hear that he was already dead. Summoning the centurion, he asked him if Jesus had already died. When he learned from the centurion that it was so, he gave the body to Joseph. What tender morning! Jesus' lifeless body lays in his mother's arms. In her grief, she remembers the words of her son over the bread. This is my body broken for you. And over the wine, this is my blood poured out for you. She remembers that the little baby in Bethlehem worshipped by shepherds and kings. She remembers the days when the crowds followed him, and she is full of sorrow. He has truly died, a profound sacrifice, complete. I behold this scene at the foot of the cross. I contemplate touching, caressing his body. I remember all his hands have touched. All have been blessed by his warm embrace. I pause to let it soak in. He knows the mystery of death. He has fallen into God's hands. For me, that I might love as I have been loved, I pour out my heart to the God of all mercies.
We adore you, O Christ, and we bless you, because by your holy cross you have rid the world. From the Gospel of St. Mark, chapter 15, verses 46 to 47. So Joseph brought some linen cloth, took down the body, wrapped it in the linen, and placed it in a tomb cut out of rock. Then he rolled a stone against the entrance of the tomb. Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of Joseph, saw where he was laid. They take the body of Jesus to its resting place. That night his body lie in the dark earth of the world, a seed dying in the winter of all spirits. All those who had loved him felt emptied and exhausted. There seemed no longer any sense or purpose in anything. But at least no more harm could come to him. They closed the tomb and left. The huge stone over the tomb, the final sign of the permanence of death, and the world sighs and waits. I pause to contemplate this act of closure on his life. In solidarity with all humanity, his body is taken to its grave. I stand for a moment outside this tomb. This final journey of his life has shown me the meaning of his gift of himself for me. This tomb represents every tomb I stand before with fear, in defeat, struggling to believe it could ever be empty.